Hello everyone, this is the LEGO Fairgrounds Collection Haunted House, and there are no camera tricks going on right here. This is absolutely real. Let me pick it up and put it right next to me so you can see, indeed, that's how tall the thing is. No trickery required. It is 68 centimeters or about 26 and a half inches tall. Comes with over 3,200 pieces. I know that a lot of people are going to be interested in just how big this appears next to some other known quantities, so I did take some shots of it next to some other large Lego items. I didn't get all of them. I will never get all of them together, but hopefully this is enough to give you more useful context to put things into proper perspective. I also think it's important to establish right from the start that this is not simply a super tall yet super thin facade. It's built on a 32 by 32 plate base, so not base plates, but actual plates for more strength and the ability to open it up securely. And there is some mechanism that's visible around the back, but at least the entire structure is fully built around all sides. And aside from the mechanism, which tries to use as few colors as possible, you're not seeing little details that are popping through from the interior. You're not seeing parts that were used to hang things on the walls that are off color and such that ultimately look embarrassing. So you can display this from many angles in this form and it will look equally good. And it does open up all the way to give you good access to the interior, where you can see a lot of details, including a plethora of Easter eggs that are references to various sets and themes, mostly from the 1990s, and the majority of them from adventures-related themes. We'll take a closer look at a bunch of those, but with it open in this form, honestly, it doesn't look quite as good from the outside side of it, because it does open up from the front. You end up having two halves of the front, and then the original back, which has the exposed mechanisms that don't display all that well. Let's start our tour of the interior details with a look at this huge printed picture frame. That's a printed panel. There are no stickers in this set whatsoever. Depicted there is Baron von Baron, whose house, whose mansion this whole thing is supposed to be, and that ruby as well as the mummy that you can see when you activate the light brick inside of there. That's just it's a projection based on another printed piece that's behind this, and the light brick just shines through it. All that is a reference to set 5919 from 1998. On the wall below that are a couple of heads of statues of Anubis, also from 1998 and set 5938. And on the ground floor, with a pickaxe and shovel in a container next to it, another reference to Adventurers Line activities, this is the organ of Caterino, a reference to former LEGO designer Tiago Caterino. This is my personal favorite thing in the entire set, just because it looks really good and the build of it was very enjoyable as well. It's somewhat simple, but it just looks fantastic in my opinion. That can also be removed if you just want to use it by itself, and the keys are printed. That's an existing 1x2 print. The only thing that I don't like about this is that you can see a little bit of the green just between the two levels of keys. In the center of your screen here is an obelisk. It's called the Obelisk of Evil, and that's a reference to a number of the late 1990s desert sub-theme adventurer sets, none of which used that exact cartouche though. This one says from the top OGEL, which is a reference to Ogol from Alpha Team from just slightly later, and it's also Lego backwards. In the center of your screen here is a Sphinx head, which is a reference to set number 5968. And there's actually another reference to that exact same set and the same artifact. If I move this one out of the way behind there, you can see an old school plunger style detonator. Supposedly there's some TNT behind the Sphinx head in case there's a curse and it needs to be blown up. This device, meanwhile, is officially known as the Resonator, and supposedly it was a thing that was used by Baron von Baron to try to get some of the energy and magic out of the red ruby of Pharaoh Hotep, and it didn't work. But I haven't been able to find what this references in other sets. It may be something new that's been added as kind of a clue that helps us to understand the history outside of the sets of Baron von Baron. In this attic space, two of the references are from the year 2003. On the left is an Orb of Ogle. That's from Alpha Team set number 6776. And on the right, from Adventurers set number 7412, is a thing now being called the Golden Dingus. That is official. It is in the instruction manual for this set. The Golden Dingus is what that is called. The crate, meanwhile, contains the parts for a reference to JunkBot, the early 2000s browser-based game from LEGO. This one's the Idol of Everest, a color-swapped reference to set number 7417. Mercifully, the ground level in this section is not a reference unless those bottles in particular are, but this is intended just to be a ticket counter and also a control area for the ride. So you can see some printed console pieces back there that are just tiles, and also some printed slopes, and there's a lever that will control the entire ride and its movements. Also on the wall here is a little fireplace, and as you can see, that's just split into two because we've opened the whole thing up. This is the main entrance to the place as viewed from the inside, where it really does not look good. It really does not look finished at all. Looks much better from the outside. We'll have to take a look at that and also see how the doors open together. And then there's just a chandelier up above. In this final attic space are more references and also some questions that are introduced here. This is called the Forbidden Skeleton, officially, according to LEGO, and it could be one of a number of things. One thing it could be is the skeleton of Sam Sinister, the sidekick of Baron von Baron, but then with this set, they're calling Baron von Baron Samuel von Baron officially, which brings back into question the old theory about the possibility that they could be one and the same. So then who is this? But also he has the top hat, which could be a reference to the twins. We'll see those twins in the spooky twins. We'll see those in the minifigures for this set officially. So maybe they were actually triplets and this is one that's left over. Is there a clone conspiracy here? I just don't know. And then the thing that looks like a lantern upside down, but it's red inside, that's called the Altar of Alhazred, officially. That's its name in this set. And supposedly Baron von Baron just used it as a lamp and nothing else. There's also a red snake underneath this table. It's hidden way back in there, but that's another reference to the desert sub-theme of Adventurers. One more thing up here. It's a classic LEGO camera, and I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference to all the cameras that were used in so many of the sets. They're so important, or if it's just supposed to be like a security camera. One more thing, just one more thing before we get to the main function of the entire set. This plaque here, which is another print, has Roman numerals down at the base of it, and that reads out 6007. 6007 was a set from 1997 from the Fright Nights theme, and it was called Bat Lord. It featured the Bat Lord, and this has a bat on it, as well as a knight's helmet. Okay, here's the deal. This set is called Haunted House. But it's not intended to be a haunted house. It's intended to be a haunted house ride. That's why they put it in the Fairgrounds collection, as they've called it. So the main ride is right here in the center. It's a tower drop, and you get in down here at the base. But you never thought I was going to get to this. There are just so many references. So you could consider this to be a reference as well. A bunch of the Adventurers line sets use this same mold here done in dark azure. Typically it was in the old gray or tan back then, but this is the main carriage, so it will hold two people in there and has the name of the ride in a print there on the front. So this is just convenient for us huge figs to put our minifigs in there, again, two at a time, and there's just a clip at the back that will secure that into place. Around the back, you'll find a little crank, a little hand crank off to the side, and what that does is ultimately turn that big gear there, which pulls on 150 individual chain links that you have to put together. Definitely takes some patience and a little bit of manual dexterity to get that all together. But 2 of the links out of those 150 are like that. That little light gray small tank tread, I guess is what it is. So it's compatible with the system and it's a little bit wider. And ultimately there are 2 lobes or fingers that stick out and get caught by this on the cart or the carriage or the car, whatever you want to call the thing that the people are in right now. So as one of these passes by, again, there are two of them on the chain in total. They're as far apart as they possibly can be. One will catch on, and then you will start to grab and pull the people up. So I'll just go ahead and do that now. This does get to be a little bit finicky. I had to tune it quite a bit. You can start to see the people moving up back there. It gets extra hard. I'll show you why that happens. It becomes more stiff and difficult to move for a little bit, but then once you get it going, it starts to go. You can see the little gray piece right there just inside the window that's pulling the thing up, and you may need to mess with this a little bit, especially when you first put it together. I found that there are a lot of tiny protrusions that can really make this work not so well and get stuck. But ultimately, when the thing gets to the top, as viewed from the inside side of this, it's going to automatically open these doors up so you get a little peek at the people just before they drop. So here they are back at the ground level, and you did not hear a crashing sound of the whole thing hitting the ground in the background there, because there is a sophisticated braking system. So all these tires here, there's two sets of them on each side. So you got some there, you got some there. Those are attached through the yellow axles you see here on the back, through gears, and ultimately to these large spike prime wheel and tire sets, which are extra heavy. So those act as flywheels to slow the whole thing down. So let's watch the full cycle. And again, sometimes this can be a little bit finicky. So you see the gray part coming through right now. So it's going to grab on the inside. This can be a little bit finicky because the alignment of things needs to be perfect. I'm going to go a little bit slow here. Sometimes it can get extra stiff right there. And there it goes. There's a clutch mechanism that's actually slipping. But okay, it just made it past, and now I can just wind this up. I got stuck again. That's kind of frustrating. There it goes. There it goes. So it's going to go up to the top, and it's actually going to drop on its own like it's supposed to this time. And you saw how the flywheels spun up, and then they just let go. There are also some rubber bushings down at the base to help with the landing. But if you have this problem where sometimes it gets a little bit stuck, you just have to kind of flex various parts. Make sure that everything is put together properly. But the main issue is that there are some axle pins that stick out on the sides of the car that's inside of there, the carriage, the cart that goes up. And those can run into just the tiniest little gaps and seams between bricks as it goes up. There's not enough gap space on the sides, and you may need to pull on these window sills and pull them apart out this way. The ones on the other side, pull them in that direction to make a little bit of extra room. It's this side and this side. Front to back shouldn't be a problem. It's just those. So let me see if I can just keep it going. There we go. It's down, a little stuck, up, down, little stuck, up, and down. And that's pretty much it. So if I just go a little bit slower, still it's slipping a bit, but it's up and it's down. Caught it. A little bit of slipping, a little bit of sticking, but it's going up, and that's how it works. To motorize this, you can use the fancy powered up system with two motors and the hub and the smartphone app if you have a compatible device and everything, but you don't need to use all that. All you need is just the regular M motor from good old Power Functions and any kind of battery box with a switch built into it, which means any kind of battery box that's compatible with the system. I'm just using a rechargeable one here because it was handy, but you don't need that. I'm going to run it at full speed, just turn it on, and it goes. And that's that. It works, and it's cheap, relatively speaking. Let's finish our look at the set by returning to the front, which is surprisingly one of the less interesting things out there, but there's another reference to be found. There's yet another new exclusive printed piece. It represents a tombstone, and that's yet another Tiago Catarino reference. It's the exact same graphic style that was used for his initials on the Ship in a Bottle set that he worked on. Just this tiny, tiny little graveyard here. Also a pumpkin out front. Another detail that I personally like, and yes, there is quite a bit of repetition to the builds for the window sections, but right there, got a little bit of stained glass, and it's simple, you know, doesn't use any fancy building techniques or anything, but I like it just because it's real, and you know, if you have this opened, you can let some light through there, and it looks kind of nice. There's another one of that printed piece there right in the center, which we saw up at the top of the tower, and another of that printed piece, which we saw on the front of the ride. And that right there is also the button, the hidden button to activate the light brick. So this is able to push in. That activates the light brick behind the large picture frame inside. Each of the major peaked sections of the roof is finished off with a similar detail to this, with some foils used up there. They used some gray frogs as gargoyles. They were very proud of that feature in the designer video for this set, the official one. And then finally, again, this is the main entrance, but this is how it looks from the front. So from the outside, it looks much better here. They have wheelchair access, which is nice to see, that consideration for a change. And then those are the main doors. The doors have an opening mechanism that's activated with this little inconspicuous gray knob here. You know, it really doesn't stand out at all, but it's easy to access it. And you just turn that and they open inward together, and you just walk straight through to the ticket counter, the way that all of this is ultimately laid out when it's folded back together. Looking at the minifigures, these are the creepy twins. We don't know much about their identity, but they are intended to represent just park employees. So one of them would be behind the ticket counter, and well, maybe the other one would be as well, possibly just doing some greeting or operating the ride directly. But we don't know much about the identities of either of these. Here are a couple more employees just playing the parts of ghosts, so they're just costumed normal people. The happy face on the right is a reference to, well, the original Lego ghosts that had the printed faces that looked like that. And then they have the sad one, which is just the alternate face. So either head can use either face. And this is just a different way of doing ghosts. Personally, I kind of miss the old ones already, but this is, you know, it's different. None of these parts are glow in the dark though. Both of these park patrons come from Newbury, which is where Hidden Side resides. So this is just showing that Hidden Side is going on in the same world as we're used to. It's kind of the intent there. Also, the figure on the right is a direct reference to a Lego designer. With the hair pieces removed, you can see that neither of these has an alternate face. Here are two more park patrons, and this is where everybody runs to the comment section and says, oh, look, the one on the right is a Karen because look at her hairstyle. Yeah. Both of these do have alternate faces, though, underneath those hair pieces. And both of those are appropriate for a ride where you're going to be getting scared. And here's the final figure, who's another park visitor. Totally makes sense to have more regular people than special employees and such. I still like that torso print. Hope to see it used more in the future. And this is another figure that has an alternate face that shows he's scared or at least nervous. Set also comes with an official Lego wheelchair, which will work with any adult or teen minifigure. They just need to be able to bend their legs and they'll fit. Finally, here are the leftover or spare pieces, and it's surprising just how few parts there are here to show, given how many pieces there are in the set. A number of the bags actually did not have any spares whatsoever, even though they did include parts like 1x1 plates or tiles or whatnot that normally would have one spare each. The set costs $250 in the US, and I am not complaining about that price, not anymore, not in any way, shape, or form, not after actually going through the process of putting it together. It's substantial. I mean, obviously, the proof is in the pudding. You know, when it's done, yeah, it's pretty darn big. And it's not, again, it's not just a facade. I personally am not very thrilled about the whole action feature, the main ride portion of it. It's finicky. You need to get it just right. I'm sure there will be some people who put it together and the very first time everything will work perfectly. That's wonderful. There will also be plenty of people who put it together and have way more trouble than I did, guaranteed. Way more trouble. I built everything on a very flat, hard surface, so I was getting things lined up nicely, made sure that all my parts were pushed together properly, that Technic mechanisms, axles, gears, bushings had enough space so they were just a tiny bit loose so nothing was bound up. I'm careful when I put stuff together, and I still had issues. Had to do some tuning down at the base, had to do some tuning up at the top, and it still doesn't work all that great. I'm sure it's possible to get it smooth most of the time, but still, it's a bit finicky. But I like the look of the thing from the outside. I'm glad actually that they went with the olive color, the olive green color, rather than going with the sand green like they did with the 2012 set, which I personally still like the outside of much more. It is still a shame to me personally also that this is purely set up as a ride. So when you look inside, the figures are intended to, the minifigures are intended to just kind of be looking left and right as they go up, as they are raised up through this center tower. They look at the exhibits that are intended to be just static. But this thing is easily large enough, as viewed from the outside, to have space to walk in there. I mean, you could easily have had more space to move around and explore those spaces with minifigures than in the 2012 set that was much, much smaller than this overall. I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity there with the interior spaces. Sure, folks who were peeking out in Lego for the very first time between 1997 and 2003 in particular will love all the references there. But those references are just thrown in as nostalgia bait. They don't do that much today. They're just things to look at. You could look at a picture of an old set. You could bring your own old set out of the garage or wherever you have it stored, or you could rebuy the old sets that don't cost that much now. It wasn't that big of a deal of a theme. So I think that making this more of a usable haunted house space, even if it wouldn't be 100% realistic like that, just where the figures could, walk around, go up one single flight of stairs. You only need to have one. And then just walk around and explore the exhibits would have gone a long way towards making this a lot more valuable, interesting, and good for people of all ages. They call this an 18 plus set. I'm fine with that. I don't care how they label things or what numbers that they put on them. It's definitely an advanced model. Some of it took some patience, but it's not too tricky. They were definitely not as careful with this, I'd say, in the design as they would be with sets that are intended for younger audiences. Like some of the sub-assemblies don't get rooted to other things until you go pretty far up. You'll build a full floor, and then if you're not being careful, if you're being impatient, you could just push that entire wall over and cause a bunch of stuff to collapse until you get to a point where, okay, we're done, we've got the sides on, and then we tie all that together. There are more steps per step, so each time that you move forward in the instructions, there will be more pieces that have to be put in there at a single time than is normal for sets that they've made for younger audiences in the past. I'm perfectly fine with that. Lego used to do that for all ages, and their instructions are still good. They're still clean. They're readable. It's easy to distinguish the different colors, different shades of the same colors between the grays, between the dark gray and the black and all that. So all that is perfectly fine. And the design work that has been done here, except for the mechanism, again, the mechanism is a little weird. I feel like it needed, if they just had an extra half stud of gap on either side, where the axle pins that stick out the sides of the moving carriage or cart portion could breathe a little bit, it would have solved at least 90% of the problems, if not all of them entirely. That's one of the fundamental things of elevator and elevator shaft design. In Lego, you need to have space, because if you're counting on the space to be exactly right and you have to go past a wall or ultimately a stack of bricks that you're counting on being smooth, and it's not perfectly smooth because there's always variance. I mean, this is a flat wall right here, and I can feel it catching on my fingernail, and some of these catch more than others, especially nowadays that they are cooling their parts more quickly. The part quality is still very good, generally speaking. Their shape and everything is very good, but around the edges, you do tend to get a little bit more deformation coming out of the mold. And you can see that with some tiny little gaps in some places where just the edges will be curved over, which prevents the parts from landing perfectly one on top of the other. But I'm not really complaining about that, just referencing stuff that needs to be considered in design of elevators in particular, and that wasn't considered here, and makes it a little bit more difficult than it should be. Still, quite an impressive set. Tall, deep, lots of details on the inside, even if the figures aren't able to appreciate them fully. The figure selection is very nice. I personally am not the biggest fan of those new ghosts for this one. The faces are good. The overall thing, it's okay. It's okay. But I liked the old ones better. The fact that this has no stickers is fantastic. I would have been willing to pay more because of that. There are so many pieces that are printed, that are exclusive, that are new to this, and are printed well at that. That is very good. Plus there's the light brick, probably my second favorite action feature in this set, or feature beyond just static display. My favorite part being just how the doors open, because that is just slick and it just works exactly how I'd want it to. It's integrated well, like that's just good stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff here, some questionable stuff, some stuff that I personally don't agree with in terms of overall design decisions, but let me know what you think. I'm going to turn it over to you. I've done a pure build of this, which was in one sitting, one single session. That should be available to you now if you're watching this review right when it comes out. The speed build for this will probably be a day or two behind. It takes a little extra time for the pure build, the real-time builds to become available for me to do my processing on that. But thank you for watching. Looking forward to your comments, and I'll talk to you again soon.